If you have been keeping up with recent episodes, this may not be the story you were next expecting to hear about. The fact is, a couple of weeks ago, I received an email from a Ukrainian army officer in which he conveyed a rather unusual story about his airborne unit being ambushed in 2015 by a group of Russian reconnaissance soldiers. He and his men were at a severe disadvantage, and by his account, none of them should have survived that firefight. In fact, as this young officer will also tell you, how he survived and what happened to those Russian soldiers during that ambush seems to defy any rational explanation. Considering recent events in Ukraine, I felt that his story deserved to be told sooner rather than later. The story is baffling and was difficult for me to title. So, like our Ukrainian friend, I can only ask, what happened in Ukraine? This Ukrainian gentleman did introduce himself to me in his email, and although I would have elected to conceal his identity for the sake of his operational security, or OPSEC, he did in fact ask that I not use his or any other names mentioned when retelling this story. By his request, he will therefore only be referred to as Cap. However, he did appear comfortable in providing the name of his unit, so I can at least offer you that much. In 2015, when this story takes place, he was serving with the Ukrainian Air Assault Forces 79th Airborne Brigade, as he referred to it. Since 2014, Cap's unit is known to have been involved in a number of battles and peacekeeping operations throughout the conflict, offering a staunch resistance to the growing pro-Russian insurgency early in the war. And now, they've been invaded. For the sake of OPSEC, I will not provide his current military status. The following is his story. It all happened in 2015, 9 kilometers southeast from the town of Ilovaisk, Donetsk region, Ukraine. I'm sure you guys are well aware of our long-lasting war against Russian aggression. I will say that the following year after the war began, 2015, was nothing less than a living hell for all Ukrainian military. I was a first lieutenant back then, acting as a platoon commander, and one day my platoon received an order to secure a medical evacuation or medevac mission at one of our artillery firing points near Ilovaisk. It all went well from the start. After we arrived at the location, our field medics did a miraculous job, with quite literally only their bare hands, in saving the lives of the wounded men that we recovered. We then began making our way back to the city of Mariupol, about 100 kilometers, 60 miles, to the southwest, transporting 2 wounded privates to a local hospital. And that's when the enemy hit us. Only 2 minutes into our return trip, as we drove down a section of road with trees on both sides, our convoy was ambushed by enemy soldiers. What we would later discover was a Russian sabotage reconnaissance group, or SRG. They had positioned themselves in the tree line to the right side of the road. As we passed by their position, they opened fire on our vehicles. Both of my platoon's vehicles were BTR-80s, these 8-wheeled amphibious armored personnel carriers. They were still kicking, but they were old as hell. Rusty Soviet-era junk. And now they were under heavy 12.7mm machine gun fire. Now, these guys were professionals with at least a bit of honor because they didn't fire a single shot at the medevac vehicle. Instead, they focused all their fire on the escort vehicles, on us. I immediately ordered the medevac vehicle to proceed to Mariupol, then radioed our brigade command about the situation and called for immediate backup. Meanwhile, the enemy SRG commander must have been impatient and decided not to waste any extra time on us, because only a few moments later, everything went to hell. They had decided to use one of the worst weapons possible on us. It's called a bumblebee. The Russians call it a flamethrower, but it's actually a thermobaric weapon. It fires a rocket loaded with a highly combustible fuel. When it reaches its target, the fuel is dispersed in a cloud that is then detonated by the warhead's explosive charge. The resulting explosion is devastating, radiating a powerful concussion wave and a massive fireball. Although typically used out in the open or against trenches, it's very effective against armored vehicles, as the aerosol gas can enter small spaces and allow the fireball to expand inside. One of our 2 BTRs received a direct hit immediately. Half of my platoon died in seconds, burning alive in a fucking tin box under several hundred degrees Celsius. I ordered my driver to perform evasive maneuvers and get us the hell out of there. Look, I'm not John Rambo. None of us here are. Back then, we didn't even have personal thermal scanners. Not a single piece for the entire platoon. Stuck inside our transport, we were completely blind, as we were unable to locate targets hiding in a tree line. We were just sitting ducks under heavy fire. And they were going to kill us. The only thing I could do is try to save at least half of my men. I began radioing back the coordinates of the enemy tree line to the nearest artillery base. But before I could finish my transmission, boom. My BTR got hit by a rocket. And only by the grace of Jesus Christ Almighty, it was not a direct hit. The Bumblebee rocket exploded, hitting our right front wheel. The hull was not penetrated, but it was on fire. Everything in a 60-meter radius on the right side of our vehicle was on fire. We had no choice. If we stayed inside the vehicle, we were dead. I don't remember exactly how we got out. It all happened so fast. But scrambling out of the vehicle, I was nearly blinded as the heat of the flames burned my face very badly. 2nd and 3rd degree burns. We abandoned our BTR and took cover in the tree line on the left side of the road, hoping our backup would arrive before the enemy swarmed our position. Then, in an instant, everything suddenly stopped. At first, we thought our backup had finally arrived, but no. They were nowhere in sight, and we quickly realized that was not the case. In fact, none of us really knows what happened next. It was just completely silent. But then, just as quickly, it wasn't silent anymore. The sounds of loud screams and chaotic gunfire was now coming from the opposite tree line. We took cover, waiting for bullets to start impacting the trees around us again, but it seemed like they weren't firing at us anymore. We were so confused, we had no idea what was happening. 10 seconds later, the screaming and gunfire stopped abruptly, ending with absolute, almost surreal silence. It sounded like the Russian soldiers had been attacked, but it wasn't our backup. Because after another 15 minutes of silence, as we held our position in the tree line, our actual backup arrived. The entire 2nd Company of 79th Airborne Brigade, accompanied by 3 T-64 tanks and 4 medevacs. They met no resistance from the enemy position on their arrival. Everything was still quiet. We thought they might have conducted a withdrawal from their position, but no. Moving into the tree line on the right side of the road, we found the Russian soldiers, still in their fighting positions. There were 8 of them, and they were all dead. The area was an absolute bloodbath. 8 bodies, an entire standard Russian SRG, killed in action, but not by us. While some of our group started searching the area, we inspected the bodies, looking for any documents and intel, and certainly to determine what had killed them. Each one of them had received at least 5 lethal gunshot wounds. Based on the positions of their bodies and weapons, the only possible answer we could come up with was also the most confusing. They had killed each other. Wartime Stories will continue right after this. And now, back to the story. There are no official records of this event. As I said, 2015 was nothing less than a living hell for all Ukrainian military, so we didn't bother. 8 dead enemies are yet another 8 dead enemies. But 6 years on from that day, I still have a few large red marks on my face, left there by the 2nd to 3rd degree burns. They have started to fade away, thanks to the medical efforts of Central Military Hospital doctors in Kyiv. But still, the scars are a constant reminder. I can't stop wondering what would cause 8 stone-cold, highly trained, professional soldiers to suddenly start killing each other in the middle of a firefight that they were clearly winning. Now, after reading this first email from Cap, I replied and pressed him to offer any speculations he might have about what might have happened. He responded with the following. I understand that such an ending for the story is confusing. It surely is, and it remains so for us until present day. There is no rational explanation for it. At least I'm not able to find one. Myself, the survivors of my platoon, as well as our brigade's high command, did our best to figure out what happened. Investigating the site, we didn't find any footprints, gun shells, etc., except those of the SRG men. They were on their own. No one interfered with them. We did recover a mil-spec handheld device from their dead commander. It contained an ambush plan, including the backup routes and extraction or withdrawal plans. But they were winning. They were in control of the situation. Our backup was miles away, and they had at least 10 to 15 minutes to wipe us out and to vanish into thin air. They didn't face even a minor threat of being captured. They didn't have an ammo shortage. I mean, with the amount of ammo we found on them, they could have kept us busy all day. And they had 2 extra bumblebees that were unused. Based on equipment and weapon markings, we most likely faced a reconnaissance platoon of the Pskov Airborne Division. They were pros. Russian airborne are well-trained, extremely well-equipped, and cold-blooded. Russian troops are trained for partisan and guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run ambushes, and in desperate cases, they are known to perform suicide. But common practice for them in such cases is to use hand grenades to do so, not to shoot each other with AKs, and for sure not to do so in a 100% win situation. The only rational explanation might be that they received a direct order from high command to do so, but it's hard to believe that Russian commanding officers are maniacal psychopaths, putting their highly trained men to waste for no reason in a winning situation. Nothing kept those 8 soldiers from withdrawing from the area. Nothing kept them from killing us long before our backup arrived. Instead, they did what they did. Our high command also considered the possibility of something pertaining to some kind of psychological warfare against us, demonstration of some sort. But this explanation didn't amount to anything either, as no one figured out what exactly they could possibly be trying to demonstrate. My men later called it a hand of God, or a deed of our guardian angel. Some of them became true believers after that. Not me. I'm still doing my best to remain rational. The whole site of the SRG position looked like a bloodbath. They were shooting each other in full auto. Now, who does that to his own men? The only conclusion I came up with after these years is that all 8 SRG soldiers were mentally triggered, all at the same time. They just snapped. Some sort of mental program, you know? But why in a winning situation? I don't know. I know this is all crazy. And today, yet again, Ukraine might face even crazier stuff. We currently have about 150,000 Russian troops concentrated along our borders, so the war may go full scale in weeks or even days. Your officials, including State Secretary Blinken, are regular guests here in Ukraine these days, as well as British, American, and Canadian military advisors, helping us out to prepare our defenses. Ukrainian military forces are now better trained, better equipped, and ready. But still, I hope my men will never face full-scale combat against Russian regular army again.
Breaking news, Russian troops on the move in Ukraine with blasts heard in multiple cities.
The Russian military attacking from the south, the north, the east, taking out military
installations across Ukraine, but also reportedly hitting some civilian targets.
A missile slamming into an apartment building, killing at least 2 people.
Russia has launched a military assault on Ukraine, hitting targets across the
country, and all men of fighting age and reservists.
Ordinary citizens arming themselves to defend their country from
Ukraine's
Russian
government says dozens of troops have already been killed since the fighting began.
Reported to be on the streets of Ukraine's second-largest city.
The largest invasion of a neighboring country in Europe since World War II.
They're calling this the people. Gunshots to control crowds. Fighting for trains that struggle to carry the mass exodus.
This woman, though, with placards saying "One people, one fatherland," is all for the war.
I feel myself being ashamed for being Russian. We're all going to burn in hell for that.
I hope Ukrainians will forgive us someday. I feel the shame that I'm a citizen of Russian Federation.
And it appears to deliberately strike a car driven by an elderly civilian.
Along Europe's eastern flank, the latest deployment of American soldiers are among a number growing fast here in Latvia to defend the NATO alliance.
Children are waiting out in hospitals and other facilities they hope won't be targeted. Some heartbreaking images.
Ukrainian troops fight running street battles with Russian forces, fending off the picture what's left of a destroyed Russian convoy stopped dead in its
The Ukrainians appear to be trying to take down
Ukrainian President Zelensky has been extremely active. I don't need a ride, I need ammunition, he said. He continued, I am here, we're not putting down arms, and this is our land, our country, our children, and we will defend
At first, we were scared, really scared. But now we are ready to fight. And fight like hell.
Citizens standing up. A group of unarmed men blocking the way of tanks, shouting, "Nobody wants war, go home."
I'm here in order to protect my family, my country, and my region.
Told us he supports President Putin. Many others told us they do not, including one woman who said, "Do you know people in Ukraine?"
Yep, I'm actually in love with one.
Vladimir Putin is losing this propaganda battle.
Soldiers are going in, some of them thinking that they're going to be welcomed as liberators, like the Ukrainians want this.
Smartphone killed Russian soldier.
Mama, I'm in Ukraine. There is a real war raging here. I'm afraid. We are bombing all of the cities together, even targeting civilians. We were told that they would welcome us, and they're falling under our armored vehicles, throwing themselves under the wheels and not allowing us to pass. They're calling us fascists. Mama, this is so hard.
In several moments he was killed.
When do you expect Russians to be in the middle, in the center of Kiev?
Never.
Today, Russia is losing this fight.
Cap, thank you for sharing your story. Navitavud purimi holeafa. Kamanam. May God be with us all, my friend. In his email, Cap also offered the following confession. He says, "I'm not a writer, so please pardon my English. It's surely not my native language. But still, I'll do my best to keep my story at least understandable." Your English was nothing less than exemplary, sir. You'll notice I really didn't have to do much editing. So, along with only minor punctuation and grammar corrections, I have of course done my best as a writer and narrator to deliver your story so as to have the impact that it should, based on the experiences you described. Cap, thank you again for providing me the opportunity to share your story. I'm not sure if God had a hand in saving your lives that day, but if he did, I pray he continues to do so. Stay safe out there.
A driver mocks stranded Russian soldiers who have run out of fuel, pulling up alongside and offering to tow them back to Russia.